I watched my dog's eyes track something moving across my living room, his head tilted, following its path, but I was alone, completely alone. My name is Alex. This happened last fall, after I'd moved into a small rental house just outside of Medford, Oregon. The place was a bit isolated, surrounded by tall pines, but it was cheap and quiet. My only roommate was my dog, a loyal, goofy golden retriever named Buddy. He's scared of plastic bags and loves everyone. Or he was. It started subtly. I'd be watching TV late, and Buddy would lift his head from his bed in the corner. His ears would perk up. He'd stare into the dark hallway leading to the bedrooms. Just a low, curious whine. I'd figure it was a raccoon outside, or the house settling. I'd tell him, "It's nothing, bud," and he'd eventually settle down. But it got more specific. He began doing it at the same time every night, 3:14 a.m., like clockwork. I know because I'd be woken up by the sound of his claws on the floor, pacing back and forth at the foot of my bed. I'd open my eyes and see him silhouetted against the window, standing stiff, staring at my closed bedroom door. A low, rumbling growl would build in his chest, a sound I'd never heard him make before. I started getting up with him. One night, I cracked the bedroom door open. Buddy shoved his nose through the gap, sniffing the air violently. He let out a single, sharp bark, a sound of pure warning, then backed away, whining, his tail tucked between his legs. The hallway was empty, just dark and silent. I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. This wasn't a raccoon. I bought night lights. I left the hallway light on. It didn't matter. 3:14 a.m., the pacing, the growling. One night I decided to record it. I set up my phone on the dresser, pointing it at Buddy's bed. I went to sleep with a knot in my stomach. The next morning, I saw the video had recorded for over 8 hours. I fast forwarded to around 3 a.m. There was Buddy asleep. Then at exactly 3:14, he woke up instantly. His head snapped toward the door. He got up. The growling started. He started pacing. But then he stopped in the middle of the room. His head began to move slowly, his eyes locked on something. It was like he was watching someone walk from the door, right past my bed, over to the corner of the room. His head tilted up, as if following the height of a tall person. Then he backed into a corner and whimpered for an hour. He was watching something, something that was right there in the room with us. The next night, I couldn't sleep. I just watched the digital clock. 3:10 a.m., 3:12. Buddy was already awake, standing on my bed, a tense, shivering statue against my leg. 3:14. The tapping started. The tapping gets slightly louder. It was a soft, metallic sound, coming from the kitchen, like someone lightly drumming a fork on the counter. Buddy's head tracked the sound. His eyes were wide, terrified. He followed the invisible path from the kitchen into the living room, and then it stopped right outside my bedroom door. The doorknob began to jiggle, not violently, slowly, deliberately, like someone was testing it. Buddy let out a choked, guttural snarl, the hair on his back standing straight up. I couldn't breathe. I was frozen. The jiggling stopped, and then from the other side of the door, I heard a long, slow scraping sound, like a fingernail being dragged down the entire length of the wood. I called the police. They found nothing. No signs of breaking and entering. No fingerprints on the doorknob. They said it was probably the wind. They didn't watch the video. I moved out a week later. Lost my deposit, didn't care. Buddy and I now live in a second-floor apartment in a busy complex. He doesn't growl at 3:14 a.m. anymore. He doesn't pace. But sometimes when we're out on our walk, he'll suddenly stop and freeze. He'll stare at a completely empty patch of sidewalk. His tail goes stiff, and he'll let out that same low, confused whine. And he refuses to walk past it. The camera showed him step over the threshold, stand in the dark, and then kneel, right where my dog had been barking the night before. He never left. My name is Aaron B. I live in Yonkers, New York. I work daytime IT support, and I keep odd hours sometimes. I've had Buddy, my lab mix, since he was a puppy. He's my routine. Walks at dawn, coffee at 7-Eleven on weekdays, the same squeaky bed in the corner. The house creaks. The fridge hums. That's the soundtrack of my life. One winter, Buddy started waking me up at odd times, not barking at the door, just this low, urgent alert. He'd sit up, stare down the hallway, ears pricked, hackles raised. Sometimes he'd follow a silent line with his eyes, mouth slightly open, like he was tracking something I couldn't see. I figured mice, raccoons, like the usual excuses. The first night it really bothered me. He woke me at 3:07 a.m. He wouldn't stop whining. He paced, then planted himself facing the hallway and wouldn't move. I put on a sweatshirt and walked to the living room. Nothing was there. The street was quiet. I checked the locks, peered down the empty corridor, and Buddy pressed against my leg like he wanted me to sit. I laughed it off and went back to bed. Over the next week, it got worse. 3:07 came, and Buddy was rigid. He'd growl low, bark once, then freeze like he'd seen a person, but I couldn't. I started to doubt myself. I'd tell friends it was stress or my imagination. My roommate suggested I buy a cheap indoor camera from Best Buy, the kind that records motion and uploads to the cloud. I set it up facing the hallway and left it on all week. The footage was boring until the seventh night. The timestamp read 03:12. Buddy was in frame, nose to the air, growling softly. Then, just outside the camera's view, something shifted the darkness. A shadow moved across the wall. The motion sensor didn't trigger because the figure didn't step fully into the lens. At 07:45, a boot print appeared in the dust on the hardwood, clear, a tread of old work boots, right at the threshold. It hadn't been there in the previous frame. The camera didn't catch the person, only the print forming, as if someone had lowered a foot slowly into the scene, placed it, and then stood still. I drove to the station with the footage on my phone. The officers walked the house. There were prints, fresh, muddy, tracking from the front door to the living room, stopping right under Buddy's bed. No prints leading back. No other evidence. They took the recording. They told me someone could have been inside and left through a window. They took fingerprints. They said they'd follow up. I slept poorly that night. Buddy curled at my feet, but every time he twitched his ears, I felt my chest tighten. At exactly 3:07 a.m., my phone buzzed with a notification. A new clip had uploaded from the camera, set to record motion. I hit play. The clip was 12 seconds long. It showed the same hallway, Buddy growling, and then for a fraction of a second, something pale where the shadow had been. Not a face, just a pale curve, like cloth or skin caught by the faint light. Then the recording stopped. No footsteps away, no exit. I moved the camera. I changed locks. I paid for a month of a higher cloud plan and set alerts to wake me if anything moved. The prints never showed again. The cops closed the file for lack of leads. My friends stopped asking. They get busy lives. Now the house has a new pattern. Every night around 3:07, Buddy gets up and walks to the hall, sits and stares. He won't go past the threshold. He looks not at the door, not at the window, but at the exact spot on the floor where the prints had stopped. I check the door, the windows, the locks. Everything's normal. Sometimes I think it was a trespasser. Sometimes I think my sleep-deprived brain created a story to explain why my dog wouldn't sleep. But then Buddy brings me a dirty, worn shoelace from under the couch, one I've never owned. I toss it out. He finds it again the next day. So now I sleep with the lights dim, and at 3:07, I don't move. I just watch Buddy watch the floor and hope whatever stood there never comes home.